Joining me today is Amir Albazi, who takes on Zelga Sumagulov on November 28th. Amir, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. Pretty close to your fight. Is this the time where you start tapering down and everything?
Yeah, exactly. Training has been tapered down now slowly, and I'm feeling very ready for this fight. I can't wait to just be there 28th.
And I'm sure you've entered the UFC flyweight rankings. What was your reaction when you saw that?
To be honest, personally, I don't really care about rankings. I'm just trying to be the best, and so rankings is like it's there, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, I'm super proud of being in the rankings. I don't really care about that. I'm looking to be the best flyweight fighter in the UFC.
Cool. And let's talk about your UFC debut. You take it on short notice. You have an incredible performance. You lock in a triangle, first round triangle choke against Malcolm Gordon. Talk to me about your whole experience. I mean, getting the call on short notice to step up and then getting a performance like that.
It was a bit surreal, Like, to be honest, I was literally like the night before. So I got the call 10 days on the Wednesday, 10 days before the fight. And the night before, I was watching Masvidal taking the fight on short notice. And I think it was on UFC Embedded. So I was just talking with my friend, like, like that is sick, like that he's taking the fight on short notice and just flying over there and fighting. And the next day, same thing happens to me. I get a call, so I'm like, let's fucking do it. I'm ready. The way we train in London shoot fighters here in London, that we always stay ready. I train year around, so it's not really, it's not nothing for me that is different. I just go and fight earlier without no training camp, and it felt good.
And you had a fight scheduled in April, correct? That was canceled in Sweden. So what was that period of time like? I'm sure it was frustrated to get your fight canceled, especially that I know Sweden is a home or a second home to you. So what was that process like from getting a fight cancellation? Were you kind of staying ready? It was such unprecedented times, right? Like no one knows what's going on and what's going to happen. So were you just kind of like in the gym? Did you have access to be in your gym? Just tell me what those months were like leading up to getting the call for your UFC debut.
So I remember I had a fight booked in Stockholm and in Sweden, where I grew up. So I looked forward to that fight. I wanted to, perform with my friends and family, people that have been, supporting me since I was 14. So I wanted to give them something back and compete there. But when that didn't happen, it sucked. But I knew I had to stay ready. And for me personally, I always work out. It's part of my life. I love fighting. I love what I do. So it's not something I feel like, okay, now we take it. I'm always training. So I just always kept in shape, did a lot of runs. Me and a couple of training partners met up outside. I put mats in my own house and we made it work. We made it work.
And you're taking on Zalgas. You were supposed to take on his previous opponent, Raul Pavia. So tell me, did you watch that fight? And did you think that Raulin won that fight?
Yeah, I watched the fight, and I think he won it. I think, but it was a close fight, like everyone saw. But I still think Rylan Paiva won that fight. Then I heard he got a knee injury, so they offered me his former opponent. So, like I said, I'm good to go. I don't really care who I'm fighting. I'm just gonna do me. So whoever they put in front of me, I don't really mind.
And even though he lost that fight, he was on a 4-fight winning streak, so he does have some solid wins outside of the UFC as well. Talk to me about Zalgas. How do you see this matchup playing out?
I'm ready for everything. I'm not the person that looking to my opponents too much. I've seen him fight. I've seen his style, and I don't think it's gonna be a problem for me for that. I'm ready for everything. I'm ready for grapplers, wrestlers, stand-up fighters, everything. So it's gonna be interesting on the 28th. I rather show you than tell you.
Fair enough. And the flyweight division, there's a spotlight on it, obviously, this weekend. We've got Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno. Then we've got the title fight between Figueredo and Alex Perez. First of all, tell me how you see both matchups playing out. We'll start with Moreno and Brandon Royval.
Both fights are close fights. You know, it's MMA, so it can go either way. But I'm gonna keep my eyes very close on it, and it's gonna be interesting.
Do you think Figueiredo retains the title?
Uh, Alex Perez is good as well. So, like I say, it's MMA. I don't like to make
Yeah.
predictions, because you never know how it goes. But I think both fights gonna be tough, good fights, and I hope they put a performance for the flyweight division.
I think with the flyweight division kind of being on full display this weekend, I almost feel like I'm sure you've had aspirations of signing with the UFC, but I almost feel like you've come in at a perfect timing, right? Because there was all that uncertainty surrounding 125, if they were going to remove it completely from the UFC and whatnot. And here you are, you come into the UFC in July, you have such a great performance, you're in the top 15, and it almost seems like there are big things coming for you with, if you can keep putting, because I know you're a finisher. I think all but one of your pro wins have come by finish. So do you see like you signed with the UFC at a perfect timing?
Yes and no. A couple of years back, I think I was already ready for the UFC. But exactly at that time when I start, going back into MMA and winning fights, the UFC actually took away the flyweight weight class, and that's why I did a couple of fights in Bellator. I did in Brave, but I agree. I think it's the perfect timing for me now coming into the UFC because I feel ready for everyone. I don't, I don't feel like anyone in this division gonna present big problems for me.
And had you gotten the call to UFC years ago, how would you compare the Amir from like 3-4 years ago to the Amir now? I know you're probably saying you probably would have been ready for it back then because you fought some really high level competition across all the promotions. But how would you compare the Amir then and the Amir now?
No, I think it's a big difference. Amir then maybe was more grappling oriented, and now I feel like I understand the whole game. I understand MMA, and I can use my strength perfect. I can utilize my opponent's weaknesses.
You've got an incredible story, and I want to touch on it. I think some people know it, but a lot of people don't, I believe. Now, you fled Iraq at a young age. You ended up moving to Sweden, eventually London. For those who don't know, tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up in London eventually.
I'm a forever immigrant. That's what they call it. So basically, I was born in Iraq, Baghdad, Iraq. At that time, my father had political problems, and the country was very unstable, a lot of problems. So we just left one morning when I was 7 years old, just sat in a car, didn't know where I was heading. I was with my family, and we just left. We ended up in Kurdistan for a bit, I think for 6 months. And from there, we moved to Syria, where I stayed for a year and a half. And from there, I went to Sweden at the age of 7, 8 years old. And I stayed in Sweden for around 11 years before I decided to move to London and pursue my MMA career fully. And with all those moves, like from Iraq to Kurdistan, going there and don't speak the language, and then from there going to Syria to a new country, and then from there going to Sweden, which is completely different. First time I see snow, first time I see like proper white people. It was really different. And with each of these move, to be honest, I end up in a lot of fights. I couldn't speak, I couldn't get my point across, and you know how kids are at that age are very bad. So I had only these two I could answer with. So I started getting it, end up in a lot of fights. And one night when I was like in my teenage years, when I think I was 13, 14, I just saw MMA on Eurosport without even understanding what it was. But I loved it from the moment I saw it. It was just pure raw violence in form of a sport. And something was attractive to me. I don't know what. Until this day I don't really know, but I just love it. I just love fighting. I don't know why.
And did this start in Sweden, where like your love for MMA, this was in Sweden?
Yes, exactly. This is the first time I saw the sport of MMA It was in Sweden. But just a random night, I stayed up late, popped on Eurosport, and I remember Eurosport was doing this UFC Unleashed, they call it. And it was usually all the fights, like with Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. So I was checking these out. And literally, I couldn't, like that night, I couldn't sleep. I woke up the next morning. First thing I Googled is MMA in Stockholm. Found the cheapest gym because I knew I wouldn't get money from my mom to go do this. Found the cheapest gym and went there and just been hooked ever since.
That's awesome. And how did you end up at London and London True Fighters?
It's another story on that. So basically, when I grew up in Sweden when I came to the age of 15, and I was already involved in a lot of jiu-jitsu and grappling, my family, who lived at that time in Sweden, decided to move to London because, yeah, as an Arabic family with that cold, it doesn't go well together. So they decided to move to London, bigger Iraqi community, and they liked it more. But when they moved, actually, I didn't move with them. So I stayed in Sweden from 15 until I was 18, 19, and just focused on jiu-jitsu and training. And literally, training was all I did. Training, go back home, rest, and go train again. That's how my days looked like. But at the age of 18, 19, I felt like I was a bit done with grappling. I want to do MMA. So I said, let's go check it out in London. If I don't like it, I'll come back. But since I went there, I saw the level at London Shoot Fighters with all the training partners there, the coaches, how the coaches taught MMA, and I loved it. So I just stayed and focused on MMA since then.
How did your parents respond to you wanting to do MMA? Were they supportive right away?
No, of course not. In the beginning, they saw as I was playing around. Like, they didn't really see it as a career. They saw it as a hobby. Like, yeah, he goes training, he does something that he likes, but it wasn't nothing more than that. I think they took it serious when I took the first Asian gold in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for Iraq ever. And I started coming up on the news, on the Arabic TV channels, newspapers. Then they kind of got like, okay, this is something, something good.
Awesome. And speaking of that, how nice did it feel to compete in Abu Dhabi? Because obviously, I'm sure you gotten a lot of people from back home showing you support. You probably had that over the years, but I'm sure it amplified after getting the win in your UFC debut. So what's that been like, getting to compete in the Middle East? I know you did for Brave, but getting to do it in the UFC and getting such a big win like that.
To be honest, I love Abu Dhabi. I love the UAE. I've been there many times. I competed there many times as well, so I feel like home there. So it just felt, extra good to do it there again. I have a very good, I have a special relationship with Yas Island now.
And how about the support from back home in Iraq? Like people just getting to know more about you, being on a big stage like the UFC.
Wow, it's been unreal, to be honest. Like, the amount of messages and the amount of people I inspired, like not only the Iraqis, like I have so many Arabs messaging me, so many Swedish people, English people messaging me. So it's been great. I'm just like, what I want to do is to bring out MMA in the Middle East. I think it's really important, and I think we have great potential there. I think we have amazing potential. The only thing we need is just some more resources and some more people showing love for the sport. Like, I love what Munir Aziz is doing, Ali Al-Qaisi. All of those people are heroes for Arab MMA. We're trying to bring it forward and show people in the Middle East that you can do MMA as well. It's not as far-fetched as many people think, that you need to be in the US or you need to be in Europe to train. Actually, good MMA gyms are already coming out in the Middle East. I'm looking forward to it in 10 years' time.
Absolutely. Well said. And I'll leave you with a couple more questions, and I appreciate your time. I know you're not much of a prediction guy, but what can people expect out of Amir Albazi? You had a great UFC debut, but for those who don't know you, we didn't get to see much. It was a quick finish, right? So for those who are going to be tuning in to watch you fight for the first time, what could they expect from Amir Albazi against Zuma Gulab?
It's going to be a lot of surprises. Like I told you, I'd rather show you than tell you. It's going to be a lot more interesting. So it's not long left. It just less, I think it's 9-10 days left. So just tune in and see for yourself.
Sure. And where do you feel like a win over Zalgas puts you? Because like I mentioned previously, you are a finisher. All but one of your pro wins have come by finish. Finishes pay dividends in the UFC, of course, in MMA in general. You move up the ranks a lot faster, and flyweight is booming. So where do you feel like a win over Zalgas puts you?
I think he's gonna put me in a good spot to get a good top ranked number 10 opponent next. You know, I don't really care who I fight, to be honest. I'm looking to fight the best. So whoever they say is the best, I want to fight them.
All right, Amir. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I love the message you put out there because, like you said, the sport is growing massively in the Middle East, which is why I wanted to bring you on as well, because I know a lot more fans are starting to tune into the sport, and you coming in at this time especially has been perfect for the fans. They always want somebody to root for, and I know obviously you're a proud representative of Iraq. You represent Sweden, you represent London, like you said, like an immigrant from all over the world. So I appreciate you doing this, and best of luck on the 28th.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure talking to you.